So I used to go around on a BMX looking for empty houses in Stone and Hackney, and then stalk it for a couple of, because I used to be a burglar as well when I was that age. So I'd be the one, you go and find the house.
It's over 30 years since jungle and drum and bass evolved from the rave scene's breakbeat era. We're excited to throw the spotlight on the continuing evolution of this uniquely British sound with some of its biggest champions. Big respect to Hype, Uncle Doug's, Rap, Jay from World Dance and Magika for joining us as we discover what makes this music and this scene, beloved by so many around the world, last forever. But to get things rolling, guys, and perhaps for those that don't know, could you each give us a quick insight into how you first got involved in the scene and what's kept you personally connected ever since? I'll start with you, Rap.
Oh, hello. Gosh, what's kept me connected? I think it just
Where did you start? Yeah, what was the beginning for you? How did you first get on the decks?
So pirate radio station, and Hype had something to do with that, actually. My first pirate radio station wasn't Fantasy FM. I was on Rave FM before that, and it started with a record called Ambiency Adored. I made that record with a guy called Jeff B, and we decided the best way to promote that record was he would go on one pirate radio station and I would go on another. So he went on Centre Force, I went on Rave FM. Flex, Cool Hand Flex helped teach me how to mix. And then I asked Hype if he could get me on Fantasy FM and meet the amazing legend that was Foxy. So I started off playing there, and that's when I got my first gig, which was Wallace Road in a little pub on the street, which was the first gig Fantasy did. So that's when I actually started. My first record was 1988.
Wow.
Yeah, a long time ago.
What do you think's kept you connected ever since?
I was going to say something so wrong.
Perhaps through production work as well that you've done, obviously making lots of
No,
tunes over the years
it's a
as well.
simple word, passion.
Yeah.
I'm just completely obsessed and love music. That's it. Because there's times when you don't earn money. There's times where it's hard. A lot of times where it's hard. It's a lot of work and you make very little income from it, but that's not why you do it. If we wanted to do that, we'd all be lawyers and accountants or something. So it's just the love of what this music does for you, the emotions it brings out, the unity it brings with everybody, and the memories that we will have that no other generation, I think, is going to ever experience what we experienced. I mean, this is our Woodstock. It's amazing.
And Hype, Rap's just mentioned there your times on pirate radio stations together back in the day. Where does your journey begin? Even earlier with the sound system
My
culture?
original journey begins probably about 1981 when I'm like 13 with pre-rave, pre-hardcore, pre-even hip-hop really. And in the UK, there wasn't even really two-deck mixing. There probably was somewhere, but it wasn't. You know, I grew up in Stone in Hackney, right next to Stone Police Station, and most of my friends were either into sport, into crime, or into sound system. And collectively, we used to go and watch people like Jartubbies go to different nightclubs at a time when we were way too young to do it. We were... First sound system we built in 1981. Second sound system I built when I was 16 in 1984. In that period, we went from one deck reggae sound. Everything was DIY, built the speakers ourselves, used to make our own flyers. I used to go around on a BMX looking for empty houses in Stone and Hackney, and then stalk it for a couple of, because I used to be a burglar as well when I was that age. So I'd be the one, you go and find the house. Then as soon as we sort of, and some of them were derelict, some of them were when somebody's bought a house, they've done it up to move in a week's time, and we've just gone and, we'd always tidy up afterwards though. So basically I went from one deck and reggae to two deck mixing, kind of like a mixture of urban black music, whatever you want to call it, like soul, hip hop, early house, kind of right at 85. And then the progression for me is from one deck to two deck mixing to competition DJ to Fantasy FM and the rave scene. Where that early 89 was when I kind of forced myself into it, because I was meeting people from in Hackney that I grew up around that were all of a sudden becoming DJs on pirate stations. And I was known as he's the wicked scratch DJ, but I'm not playing nowhere, apart from when we were doing the sound system. And by the end of I'd say the end of 86, early 87, the kind of sound system that we had, me, Shut Up and Dance, before there was Shut Up and Dance, and Daddy Earl, we were called Heatwave. You had Mike West, Beat Freak, Congo Natty today. Today he was Beat Freak in Tottenham. You had DJ Ron was in a sound system called TNT that was based Dalston, and that sound system culture where it'd gone from reggae sound to sounds that mix up everything. That kind of maybe I'm wrong, but to me it kind of all came to an end around about 87, and the progression was pirate radio, where all of a sudden. And, you know, like people doing acid raves and house raves. I remember going to my first ever acid rave. Me and a Dread, one of my friends called Lads. And we're like, let's go and see what this fuss is all about. And it was on Essex Road. It was actually in a pub. It might have been Sunrise Radio. They were another pirate station from that era. And I just stood there with my mate, and everyone in there, it was, you know, like the early kind of acid. And I'm used to going to reggae, hard reggae clubs, and it was so alien to me. I didn't like the music, and everyone looked fucking off their nut. And I'm used to people just smoking weed or drinking. So that was the first one. But then what happened is that same year, I had a friend took me to it was called Woodstock, and it was off the M25, an illegal rave. I don't know. That's all I know. It was called Woodstock, and
that was a centre force rave.
Was it? Yeah. Well, we bunked in. We parked some of the motorway. We crossed these fields. I knew, centre force, and I knew back then there's supposed to be some. You know, like back then. You know, like today, the raves are run by trendy business people. Back then, most events were run by gangsters. And we're trying to bunk it. Apart from JP,
Jay was always a lovely fella.
But I'm going across the fields with my mate, and it is pitch black, and I'm just thinking, what if we get caught? And then we're literally crawling like we're in a war zone, and they had a light that would be shining out across, you know, like to catch anyone. But then I felt like somebody's watching me, and I'm saying to my friend, we're standing there, and I'm like, there's someone watching us. Because it was so dark, my eyes, basically there was 4 cows in the field that were about 5 foot from me, but my eyes hadn't adjusted. But then we got in there, and what made me really hit me was not so much the music, it was the people there. You know, like where I come from, you know, like different racial groups go to different clubs. You know, there wasn't a lot of mixture. You know, like I was the sort of white guy at the black clubs that stood out like a sore thumb. And or if you went to a black pub, there might be 1 or 2 black guys. Sorry, a white together. Pub. You know, like a disco pub, predominantly white with a couple of black guys. You know, whereas this event, I was noticing old, young, black, white, like all. I didn't know at the time that, you know, ecstasy as well was making everybody loved up. But it really kind of eye-opened me, and I thought, I want a part of this. I think I can put some kind of input. So I joined Fantasy, and I was already, like Sharissa, I was doing a pirate station before that in, what's it called? Shady Grove, Bruce Grove, Tottenham. There used to be a nightclub called Shady Groves, and upstairs they had a radio station called WIBS, because Daddy always go, WIBS, yes. And me being the talker I am, but I'd never done radio. So, he'd be there, reggae, because we do a reggae hip-hop show. He'd play the reggae, I play the hip-hop. And then he might chat over stuff, but he's an MC, so he's standing on the chairs. I'm there, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And I'd have a drink of Tennent's to kind of prep my courage up. But then when I moved over to Fantasy, doing the sort of mixing up the you know, the early house and getting hip-hop beats and putting them on 45 and mixing them over the top, just doing my own thing. And I changed my name, because I was Dr. K, I changed it to Hype. And Slipmat knew me as Hype from... knew me as Dr. K, because I used to enter DMC under that name, and that's how I met Slipmat years ago, Slipmat and Lime. And GQ used to come to my blues dances when we were the Sound, so he knew me as Dr. K, but they didn't know who this Hype guy was. And then I met, I think I met Gary G at Ilford Island one. They used to do a weeknight there. I don't know whose event it was, but I used to go there sometimes. He's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I do this music now. And he's like, who are you then? And I was like, Hype. And he's like, you're fucking... I knew I had to know him. And Slipmat was the same. So as soon as I did the pirate radio, you know, like having the text, having that instant response, because I wasn't used to that. It just made me... And the ease of it for me. because I'm used to having to make the flyer, build the boxes,
Yeah.
go find the house, spend a couple of months trying to promote it, make no money out of it. You know, it was a great apprenticeship. So
Well, at
moving
least
into
you're
the
not
rave
burgling
scene, the
anymore.
worst, the worst that happens is you turn up with your
That was
records,
college.
and if it's empty, you know, I go home.
That's
But
fascinating.
it was instant love, and I could put my stamp on it. I was working with who was it? Kicking Records, because Shut Up and Dance had 5, 6, 7, 8, and Peter Harris, who's since passed away, had done. GTI was his record label, and he kept phoning Shut Up and Dance, asking them for advice. Like, what do you think of this tune? And they're like, you need an A&R man. This is what they told. Then I get a phone call from Smiley from Shut Up and Dance. He's like, this geezer's going to phone you. Just tell him yes. And I goes, what do you mean just tell him yes? He goes, oh, he's going to get you to do A&R in. I was like, what the fuck is A&R in? I don't know what A&R in is. He goes, you know, when you listen to tunes, you'll be fine. I told him you're the man. I had no idea. So Peter Harris phones me up. He says he's going to pay me £200 a month for a week. I can't remember. And I was like, yeah, that'll do. And he gave me a big bag of cassettes and was like, pick something. And I picked the guy called The Scientist, who was making like minimal kind of techno stuff. And I was already doing productions myself, but what I lacked was the keyboards and synths. I was good with breaks and samples. And I just thought if me and him fused together, it can work. So we done that. I did a tune called The Exorcist. I didn't think nothing of it. I just played it to Smiley from Shop. What do you think? Oh, yeah, it's all right. It was sold 2,000. So I just mimicked what he told me to Peter Harris. Yeah, it's all right. It was sold 2,000. And it went on to be we did a tune called The Exorcist, which I think 1990 we made it. I think it came out in 91.
Okay.
We made another track called The Bee literally the same week. And when The Exorcist come out, it ended up being the biggest selling dance record for 91. Is it the MRIB? You know, the industry.
I played both of them on the radio on Friday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Can I borrow them?
You owe me a tenner now.
Yeah.
So, Doug's coming to you. Where did your journey begin?
Well, funny enough,
I ain't finished it. No.
We'll
I
come
think
back.
the batteries run out, Kev.
Yeah, mine. No, yeah.
Funnily enough, my journey, I never grew up. I like my DJ thing came a lot later than these guys. So I'm a fan first and foremost and a raver. All these periods they're going to talk about, I was a paying public, buying the records, standing in the queue, raving at the front.
I was there with you.
Yeah, it started literally. I was into like rock and roll, like AC/DC and the Rolling Stones and all that.
knew it.
And then I used to see you at the gigs.
He still slips one in there and
So
then.
when I was 15, I had friends at school that was into rave, and I never got it because I come from like a band background, my family. And I remember hearing Hype scratching Radio Babylon on what was Fantasy FM. And I didn't even know this at the time. I just knew the sample of the Boney M, Babylon.
Yeah.
And it kind of resonated with me, yeah. And I didn't tell my friend, but because I used to slag the music off, you know, I'd be around there saying, it's not proper music, you've got to get a guitar. And I went home and I found all the Pirates on the stereo in my house, and I marked them off with a knife. My mum done a nut, yeah. Every pirate I found, I made a little chiv in the thing, so I could find all the Pirates, and that was the start. And then from there, I mean, I can go to my left now to Jay as the promoter. I was at the first World Dance at Lid, and this journey I was on trying to be a DJ, but following in the footsteps of all these guys. Like they'd sort of set the thing for us to all follow as kids. But my route was to be pirate radio. I mean, I always wanted to play at raves, but my route into it was going to be pirate radio. I played on a local station called Conflict, which ended up progressing over the years to becoming involved with Rinse FM. I ended up running Rinse in sort of from 99 to 2006. So the evolution of garage into grime into dubstep, like I oversaw all of that through Rinse, and they were really paramount within that thing, which is not really what we're talking about today. But what that did was it took me towards Cool FM, which was the reason I did everything really, like Cool. From the day it switched on to now, it's always been my main inspiration. The DJs, the MCs, Eastman, the boss, all of it. I just wanted to be a part of that, and I kind of found my way through Rinse to Cool. And then it's weird because my journey as a DJ, even though I always DJ'd and I always did the radio, actually no one gave a shit about me up until really Rinse got their license, and I got a show on there in 2011. Coming back off a call to a licensed station, Rinse, and kind of, I was doing, and the funny thing is, I was doing the same thing the week before as I was the week after. One week no one cared, next week the whole world seemed to care. But it brought me around all of this. It was what I wanted to do, and then I've gone into, you know, I'd always run events and stuff, but it took me into a world that I wanted to be in rather than, like, all I ever wanted to be was around these lot. Like, I remember seeing Rap at Harder They Come, Stonebridge Leisure Centre, 94, New Year's Eve, room 2, room 1 weren't open, she played Bonanza Kid for the first time. Like, I've got all these things in my mind, and the good thing is, I've now become this, like, historian of the thing, and I think if I'd have been part of what they were doing, I'd have been like them lot. You're moving forward so quick. Like, I can't remember the last 10, 15 years, but from 91 until I started to become a proper DJ, I've got it all there because I was like a super fan. So they didn't have time to be super fans, you know. But
the music moves
I
so
know
fast
more
as
about
well,
these
right?
lot than they know about themselves, and really, it's become
I
my
can vouch
making.
for that. I
Yeah.
can vouch for that.
But it's been my making because now I can, like, me and you. It's almost 10 years to the day. We had an argument, right, at Munich Airport. Do you remember this?
Was it an argument, or was it me just telling?
It was you giving it. It was you
moaning.
No, not moaning. I think I go on.
What it was, he couldn't understand why
right.
I only play old school and I only harp on about old stuff. And
No,
and
no, it wasn't. I didn't understand.
What I said was,
it.
some people like yourself are the best at moving forward, but you need people like me to remind people how great all these people are because they're too busy being great at
How
the
it all
time.
started.
Do you know what I mean?
Which
So
is
that's
what
my
we're
job.
talking about with Forever, yeah?
At the
I love
time,
you, son.
no, but when we were having that conversation, my mindset, which has changed over the last 10 years, at that point,
Yeah.
I felt like jungle in its original form was an amazing time, and the people that were keeping that bit going fine, but they wasn't bringing anything else to progress it, and that was my frustration. Is like, you're swimming in 94, and I didn't have that me and Potential Bad Boy used to sit, you know, like, he'd make traditional jungle, and I'm like, I like it, but like anything, now I'm older, I realise things go in a circle. You know, like anything, fashion, music.
Yeah.
So it's going to come back. But I felt it needed something to make it come back. And if you go back 10 years ago, at that period, not like today where jungle music has kind of had if anything, it's had a second wind. You've got young, you know, like all different generations of people liking it. At that period there, it's like you got the younger generation that are like, oh, my mum and dad listen to that. It's old people's music, you know, like, and then there's the rest. And I felt there wasn't something to gel the two, you know, like to bring that old into the future or to bring it to the
Yeah, it
current
needed
crowd.
that. I mean,
But
I've never made a
but it
tune, so
didn't
I've never
happen.
been going to be that guy. But
I'm
I'll always.
complimenting you. I'm saying that I was wrong because I always thought.
Hold on,
it ain't gonna
stop.
come back.
Say that again. Say that again.
So, Jay,
I was wrong.
can we bring Jay in? You provided a platform for this music to thrive, and tell us about how that journey began as a promoter and where it started for you.
I grew up in Southend-on-Sea, which is on the coast of Essex, sort of 50 miles from London, and Southend's a big reggae town, and so I kind of, my early musical influences were around reggae and in particular sound system stuff. I was a bit of an angry youth, so even while Jar Tubbies would play down there reasonably regularly, a good friend of mine used to promote Jar Shaka down there, so we kind of became followers of that sound system, which was kind of known to be the warrior sound, and it was a bit absolutely uncompromising. And we'd travel up. I was too young to drive. I was like 14 back then. So I'd have to get one of my older pals, one of the Dreads, to drive us up to London. Sometimes 2-3 times a week. We'd go Phoebes in Dalston every Friday because Shaka was resident there. We'd go QB's if he was in Soundclash there. We'd go Four Aces sometimes on a Sunday.
Aces, yeah.
Lloydie Coxon was the resident sound system there for years. That went on to become Club Dalston. We'd go Norwood Library once a month on a Thursday, Acton Town Hall, Hitchin College. So we kind of used to follow that sound system quite religiously. And then I'd worked street markets for years, so I kind of, had that kind of, market, sell anything background. And I'd got into working bootleg band merchandise at tours across the UK and across Europe. And when you do that, some of us, we'd also sell tickets as well. We'd become ticket touts as well. And then when the rave scene happened, I'd been in LA. I'd travelled through LA for a stopover in '88, and I'd gone to what was an early club out there. And I didn't really enjoy it. It wasn't really my thing. And then when the rave scene started in London, friends of mine started going to Rage on Thursday nights at Heaven and Land of Oz and some of the early stuff and whatever. And because of my sort of somewhat narrow-minded at the time experience in LA, I was like, you know what, that ain't for me. I'm staying with the reggae stuff and whatever. And then one day, some friends of mine, everyone went, and each week, it became like a mission. You try and convince your best friends to come raving as raving started to really take off. It became a mission. If you went to one, you were converted, and you try to convert your closest pals that hadn't been to come to the next one with you. So people was always trying to get me to come to the raves, and I used to by then I'm hosting my own blues parties. My friend Carly from King of Bisha Sound, I call him my dub master because he's just set me up with my own, he's the backbone of my own sort of reggae collection and whatever. And so Carly's sound system, we used to, ship that into houses I'd own or houses I'd rent or houses we'd find that were maybe available for the weekend.
God, another burglar.
And
burgling too.
Houses we'd find.
And then one weekend, some friends of mine, fun enough from up your way, from Dagenham, they was in Southend,
lads,
and exactly, and they was like, you know what, everyone's gone, all the cars have gone. Can you give us a lift? I was like, nah. Why don't you come? I was like, nah, it ain't for me. They were like, all right, just give us a lift. We'll give you the petrol money. You drive like a lunatic. You'll be there and back in a couple of hours. I was like, all right, I'll give you a lift. So we jumped in my car, drove them up to Slough to the equestrian centre, pulled off the road into the field outside this warehouse, an indoor equestrian centre. And as I pulled off the field, off the road onto the field, someone came over to where I'd stopped the car. The window was open and someone said, anyone need tickets, I'll buy any spares, which is the mantra of the ticket tout worldwide. So suddenly I've said to my two pals, hold on, and I've looked over and I've seen some other ticket touts that I recognise from working the big rugby games, the cricket games, stuff at Wembley, the big football matches. And this is midnight in a field in Slough. So I said to my pals, I recognise these ticket touts. They don't come out for nothing. They know what a hot ticket is. So they went, look, we've got a spare ticket. Do you want to come in? I was like, you know what? Yeah, now my curiosity's aroused. So I said, yeah, I'll come in and have a look. So I remember going in there, walking in and just seeing just big speaker stacks, bass heavy music, people raving hard. And then I looked and I thought, I've been here before. This is like big dancehall stuff. And then I looked down the far end and there was two yellow bouncy castles. And I thought, maybe not, actually. This is a bit different. So I stayed for the night to give my friends a lift home. And by now I'm curious. I'm kind of taking it. I'm looking at the bar. I'm seeing there's people 10 deep trying to pay £1 for a bottle of water or a box of Ribena. And where I'd been a market trader, I knew wholesalers. I knew where to get stuff and whatever. So I've suddenly started thinking to myself, do you know what? Maybe I could do this. So we came out of there in the morning and I said to my two pals that I'd given a lift, I said, you know what? I like this because what I liked was the shared experience. Because whilst I love reggae, I'd love going to blues reggae parties. You go to a reggae party, it's not a social thing. You're there, but people keep themselves to themselves. You smoke your bit of weed, the music, you're in there for the music. Whereas what I noticed at this first rave I went to, and I think it was Sunrise 2000 or Sunrise 3000, and what I noticed that it was very much a shared experience. There was a real feeling of unity there, which, again, like Kev said, I hadn't been used to because the things that you go to a pub, there's that group. I was never into football, but I knew various people from different football firms and whatever.
Up my birds,
and so I come out of there and I was like, you know what, I can do this. I think I'm going to get into this. And they're like, yeah, whatever. So I was like, all right, we'll see. So then I've rung a guy who gave me my first ever job. I'm working in the city by now, by the way, money broking, foreign exchange broking, which again, screaming and shouting, fast numbers, is a bit like market trading, really. And so I've rung my first boss, effectively, that gave me my first job. He wasn't my governor anymore. He'd moved out. He was out of the markets by then. And I rang him, and his name was Roger. And I went, "Here, Rog." He said, "What's happening, son? You okay?" I went, "Yeah." I said, "Rog," and I knew he was a bit of a ducker and diver and whatever. So I said, "Have you been reading the newspapers?" He went, "Yeah." "What's going on? What do you mean?" I said, "Have you seen the headlines about these raves?" He went, "Yeah." "What's going on?" I said, "Well, you know what?" I said, "I've met a few people in that game. I've been going to a few purely for research purposes because now I've started going out more." And I said, I think I want to put one together. I want to put the biggest one together yet." And he was like, "Really? What do you need?" I went, "Well, I need some land, and I might need some money." And he was like, "All right." He said, "I'll tell you what, got a pen and paper?" I was like, "Yep." And I'm in the back room, in out of the main dealing room. I'm in the side office on one of the outside lines. So he went, "Take this address down, go and look at this bit of land, give me a call in the morning." So I've gone back into the dealing room. I've asked my governor if I could leave early, go home. I've gone home, got my car, drove to Brentwood, looked at this field, and it was an 80-acre site that bordered the M25. I'm standing in this field, and the M25's there. And by now, these parties had been tagged the M25 orbital raves. So I'm thinking, you don't get much closer than the M25 to the field that's the 80 acres that's on the M25. So I've called Roger the next morning. I went, "Rog, what's that one you prepared earlier?" He went, "What? No good." I went, "Mate, that's fucking perfect. That'll do the job." He went, "All right." He went, am I in the swindle?" I went, "Of course you are." He went, "All right. What are we going to do?" I went, "Let me pull a bit of, see who I need to get involved to make this happen." And so then I've gone to the nearest ticket shop where I lived in Southend or Lee, just on the outskirts of Southend, and I've gone into a ticket shop there. It was run by a guy called Dave Raffel, or Dave the Rave, as he became known. And I said to him, "Dave," and I'm wearing a suit. I've just got off the train from working in the city, so I'm wearing a suit. I look like a bit of a straight goer, I guess, And so I said to him, "Dave, my name's Jay. You don't know me, but I want to organise the biggest rave yet." And he went, "Yeah, everyone says that." And I went, "Well, you've never heard me say it. You don't know me." And I said, "I've got a site, I've got the money to do it, I've got a few contacts, but more importantly, I've got the will and the balls to make it happen. So you get 10% for every ticket you sell in the shop. I've seen you behind the bars and behind the scenes at a few of these raves now. If you want to help put it together for me, I'll give you 10% of every ticket that gets sold." And he was like, "Well, I need to come and see the land first." So I was like, "All right, we'll go up there." So I took him up to see the land. And that was that. So effectively, he was the front of it. I'm still working in the city. I'm travelling to work every morning in the first class carriage. I remember the first time he gave me a pile of flyers. I'm giving them out to people saying, "Have you seen this rave?" But pretending that I'm nothing to do with it. And then that effectively was the first ever world dance. So I just piled in as big as it can possibly go. I didn't start small. I was just in. And then the week that World Dance was supposed to happen, the weekend that it did happen, a week running up to it, we'd spent a load of money on staging and platforms and whatever. My partner Roger, he knew the owner of Trad Scaffolding, one of the biggest scaffolding firms in London. So Trad had kitted out this field with all sorts of multi-level dance platforms and all sorts of things. And then on the Thursday, basically Dave rings me from the site and says, "The police are here. The police have cordoned off the site. It's not going to happen." And I was like, "Oh fuck, what are we going to do now?" And so then I've called Roger. I went, "Roger, look, the police are blocking off the site." But the good thing was the site owner was not going to be deterred by the police, because he was a pal of Roger's as well, because the police used to put pressure on the landowners and the landowners would change their mind. And so Roger said, "Well, look, the landowner will stand firm. What's the legal position?" I said, "Well, the legal position is we don't need a licence because everyone's a member. It's a private party, which was a play on the law back then. I think it was Tony Colston-Hayter that had first kind of, took that position in a court of law, and it was on shaky ground, but that was our position at that point. So Roger said, well, do you know what? If that's the case, we'll go to the High Court. So we literally got a hearing in the High Court the next day, which was the Friday. The judges went out for lunch to consider a verdict, came back what we feel to be deliberately late, found in the police's favour. I got a phone call at work to say we weren't able to injunct the police, so it wasn't going to happen. And I was like, I was pretty militant and a bit determined back then. Not to say that I'm not these days, but, even more so back then. So I'd got to know a few people in the scene by then, and I called one of Boy George's little brothers, who was a rave organiser, and I said, mate, look, I'm in trouble. I need a site for tomorrow night. Do you know anyone? Can you help? He was like, do you know what? I might have a site for you. I'm phoning a few people round, but he was most helpful. So he said, look, ring this guy. So I've rung this guy, Farmer Freddie, we nicknamed him, and he's told me to come down and look at a bit of land that he had access to, which turned out to be the home straight of the old Lewes racecourse behind Lewes Prison down in Sussex. So I've drove down there on a Friday evening, and we've agreed a deal over a handshake, and he's gone, all right, sweet, I like you, son, I trust you, blah 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 blah. So then I've called Dave the Rave on one of the brick phones that we're paying to rent to organise the rave, and I said, Dave, I've got a backup site. Any of the police had cordoned off the site in Brentwood, but I'd said to Dave, tell anybody that any service provider that hasn't got there yet, tell them not to come there because the police will track their movements. Any that are there that the police let off site, tell them to go to South Mim Services, but don't go back to their depot and don't unload the lorries. We're going to find another site. So now I ring Dave on the Friday night. I go, Dave, I'm standing on another site. I've got another site. This is where it is. Take Freddie's number. Come down here early in the morning. We're on. It's going to happen. So,
what year?
Just a short version.
What year was this, James?
What's this, the history of rave?
What year was this?
This is 1989.
You've out-lyric me, mate.
Okay.
Yeah, this is 1989.
So it began like a huge amount of effort to get to that point.
Give him a split.
And we'll come back to World Dance a little later.
Short
But that was you
versions
would
only,
say that
everyone.
was probably officially the first World Dance.
That was the first World
Okay.
Dance, and that was on the 19th of August.
Right.
And we finally delivered the show that night, and from then I was in. I
You
was
were in.
hooked, and
rest is history.
then started doing small warehouse parties at Clink Street and Ashwin Street. I used to look at venues where there'd been reggae blues parties, because they had they'd let stuff go all night. They were used to loud, heavy bass music, and
obviously this music was breaking out all over the UK. And what was your experience in the Midlands, Magika, as you were coming out of?
What are you talking about?
We're coming out. We're talking about. We're going to get on to like
From the beginning?
the birth of
No, I
jungle,
mean,
jungle and
we're
drum and bass.
seeing-
Now we're going to.
We're only on question one. Blimey.
Yeah. Just quickly to bring you in, and obviously where you got involved with promoting, which would have been like as a jungle scene.
He wasn't
coming
just-
out of
he was
the
an MC
hardcore
as
rave
well.
scene.
Yeah.
He was doing it all.
In terms of just starting out, very briefly, I had
God, you
friends.
do go on, mate.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Do you know what? It's funny.
I
Isn't it?
had some friends.
The funny thing, he's an MC.
Don't worry,
He's
we've
an
got nothing
MC.
else to do.
Lost for words.
He's the only one
After
not-
that, though, I was just listening. I
He's
can't
the only
beat
one
that.
not talking into the mic.
No, it's-
He's
yeah,
the
sorry.
MC.
Yeah.
Go on.
Do apologise.
Mic check. 1, 2.
Yeah, I had some
Thanks,
friends in the next road. I always call them by the County Close crew. And they introduced me to the rave scene. They were all going out to raves. I had no idea what a rave was. I had no idea what the music was. I hadn't been exposed to it. I remember when they said to me, they said, "Oh, do you want some gear?" And I thought there was on about clothes. But they, obviously I just got this rude awakening. It was something else. And they exposed me to music, and they had a house party. And they had a guy there called Patrick from T99. And he was playing, and I heard this tune, Anastasia,
yeah.
and I was like, it was just like a bomb. It just exploded. I'd never heard anything like it in my life, and that was straight away. I was just like, what is that? and that's what kind of got me into it. Then I used to go to a club that was run by friends of ours, Earl
Yeah.
and Jerry from UB40.
Yeah.
At the Moseley Dance Centre, and I started attending there, got onto the mic. But anyway, fast forwarding, started to get into parties very quickly. So 1990, 91, hired a community centre. The process then, you'd go and book it, they'd give you the key, they'd leave you to do what you wanted to do. At that time in police, I don't know about London, but we had like what we called a paid party unit, and they would go round cracking down on illegal parties.
Yeah.
So they cracked down on this party before it could happen, and we ended up being on Central News. So that was an experience. But the whole jungle thing for me, I think when Amazon, which you played at and Kevin played at in Wolverhampton, around 92, 93, was it, Amazon?
I think it was 92.
Yeah, it was around that. That was my introduction. And coming from sort of like the Quest era and the Pandemonium era in the Midlands, all breakbeat, one sound under one roof, then going into like Amazon, it was very dark, very moody in comparison, and yeah, and an experience. So that was my first taste of sort of jungle.
But as then jungle and drum and bass grew out of the rave scene, rap for you, what was perhaps a groundbreaking or transformative moment with its evolution, either production or performance as a DJ? Where did you think this was going somewhere new and you could really see something special happening?
I have to say, I think for me, I'd been doing music for a long time, doing different genres. I've been doing hardcore. I'd done ambient Balearic house, which was my first record. It wasn't really till I got to AWOL and Paradise Club that I think that I saw something different happening with the music. For me, sitting in that DJ booth, watching the greats like Randall, and all these DJs just rolling this music. You've got to understand that Happy Hardcore, I was playing Eclipse up north. It was all very innocent, the music. There was no rub. And you went to AWOL or you were at Paradise Club and you suddenly heard these dark bass lines, and there was beauty in the tracks, but the bass lines rubbed in a certain way. And then watching the DJs roll in a certain way, it just affected me, and I felt that this music was complicated, multi-layered. It wasn't childish, and I guess I was attracted to the dark side of it.
Dark side of the force.
And I also thought the production was incredibly complex, and that attracted me because at my age, all girls were interested in boys and I was interested in MIDI. So it was like, I was just fascinated and hooked from day one and obsessed with the production. But just watching my heroes playing, I just remember just sitting there going, this is dangerous music, this is new, and I like this. And much like how Jay said, I just felt like I want a piece of this and I want to bring my own stamp into it. For me, that's when it changed. It's different, I think, for everybody. But for me, it was I'd been DJing a long time by then already, but for me, it was going to Paradise Club, seeing that happen there. That changed me forever from, I think, just wanting to do it to really wanting to be taken seriously as a producer and seeing the evolution of drum and bass jungle, what it could be. To me, it was all jungle then, but seeing what it could become. I thought it was just cutting edge.
And Hype, how about you? You obviously started Ganja Recordings, and what was that moment like for you in terms of where you could see it going? Would you see it developing?
I don't understand the question.
What was a great?
When
what
I
was
started Ganja Records,
what was the biggest moment for you? A transformative moment where you could see the evolution of the music, that something special was happening.
Shut Up and Dance. Before all the
Before
jungle actually became an established scene, and I've said it, and some people disagree with me. I'm like, 94 is not when jungle started. It's just when it became, like all the magazines.
It went over the top,
became a proper scene, or it became in fashion. Like prior to that, it was very underground. Like Sharissa was saying, you go to certain events. It was developing still, and for me, with my roots going back to the sort of reggae sound era, then the hip hop, then when I was doing Fantasy FM, what I liked to do was put the breakbeat, put the like the elements that weren't in normal house music and what I was influenced by into it, but it wasn't what I wouldn't call what I was doing then jungle. Shut Up and Dance, if you go through a lot of jungle producers, in that first wave,
Yeah.
most of them will credit Shut Up and Dance as a massive influence that inspired them to do what they're doing. And Shut Up and Dance were part of my crew. I was their DJ. I was watching him produce in his bedroom. He was the biggest influence in
£10 to get
shaping
in
me.
changed my life.
Well,
Yeah.
£10 to get in, doing the ragga tunes, that basically everything, the way they were making the music, because they were doing it in their bedroom with no record label.
DIY.
They had a girl, like, we're like brothers, me and Shut Up and Dance. So if I went to their house, I'd just walk in, if the door's open, I'm in. And they had a girl that used to work for them in his office was his bedroom, and this girl would sit there by his house phone, and I'd go around there and she'd be terrified. And I'd say to her, it's all right, like we're friends. But the influence it gave me was you can do it yourself, you're selling it yourself. The ideas were like a mishmash of everything that we'd grown up on. And it was all put into one sound. Doing Jungle Fever for Eastman and Brocky, I think it was end of '93. He'll probably tell me. Yeah, the first ever Edge of Coventry Fever.
Yeah.
When I did that dance, it was a very important dance for me. Not just because I played it. I had friends come up there with me that were older than me. I had a friend that was 10 years older than me, Terry. And when I was playing, Ron, like I said, DJ Ron was there amongst other DJs, but Ron used to be in a Sound TNT, and it was like we're looking at a melting pot. The crowd was mixed, half a Hackney's there. I'm seeing White Glove, like a mishmash of people that on a normal day I wouldn't expect them to interact. And it was beautiful. And the music was everything I'd grown up on, all put into a melting pot. But I was just playing. I was just enjoying the night. And then my friend in the booth after I finished was staring at me in a very emotional way, like he was going to cry. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with him? And then I just said, what's wrong with you? You off your nut or something? And he went, nah. He goes, I've waited all my life for this. And the penny still hadn't sunk with me. I was enjoying it. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he goes, well, look out there. He goes, all my life. Because he's a different generation to me. So to him, it was even more important seeing that racial interaction. The music's great. It's a melting pot of everything that we had. The crowd was a melting pot. I don't think there was any trouble at all. It was just probably ecstasy played a big part at that time, because I was seeing people from my manor.
It definitely did.
Yeah,
It definitely did.
but I always
I'll vouch for that.
use ecstasy as I don't condone drugs, but if I had to pick one, I'm like, pick ecstasy. It was the only thing that made everyone, I'd see someone that I know is a psycho. And he's all there, he's ready, he's cuddling his mate.
So what, you don't want to bump into him on a Tuesday, don't you?
Yeah.
Tell you
but
right
those
off.
people, that melting pot, I think everyone being loved up, whether you want to admit it or not. Because if you look at post that's everything became a lot more integrated. So for me, it wasn't just the music.
Yeah.
And then on the music side, it was important because I felt like we created this. Like prior to Jungle, like you got house music, it's America, hip hop, America, reggae, Caribbean. The techno, like the hard European techno. There wasn't really, British had its British hip hop, but I don't think in that early stage of British hip hop, nothing like it is today.
It didn't connect.
It didn't connect with me.
Yeah.
I still respect the artists that were around them, but I wasn't into that. That Jungle to me was our hip hop, and at the time it exploded. It exploded, but the infrastructure of it, for a whole dance genre was quite small. Which I liked again, like you knew everybody or you knew a lot. It was quite a close net. Although we're all competing, we're friends. You pass around each other's studios. That interacting with everybody. I'd go to Jungle Fever office or I'd come and visit Jay at World Dance up in the was it Shoreditch, isn't it? In that big derelict building where he's on like the third, I don't know what floor. And I think who would have an office here? Now them buildings are worth, the trendy, sure it weren't trendy, but it was just being in that, like Eastman, Brocky, people like that. I grew up on his sound system before he was Cool FM. I didn't know them. They're just a little generation older than me. I'd go and watch them. So it was a nice melting pot of music and people that have created something quite unique. And
Would you class them in some ways then? Obviously, we're talking 94 and everything goes bigger
Well,
and
I'm talking
overground.
before as
but
well.
obviously, going back, would you class some of these as the unsung heroes then, if you like, of building this scene?
Which one?
You talked about Shut Up and
Well,
Dance.
Shut Up and Dance to me are not unsung because people credit them, but they don't get the credit they...
throw the spotlight on. Anybody else you'd like to throw the spotlight on as an unsung hero, perhaps, from those days?
I think Potential Bad Boy. I mean, there's people that everybody knows, but like there's a kind of... And again, I'm not taking away from anyone else that gets like most of the people that are talked about. If someone does an article about the evolution of the scene, they usually go to certain key people that all did what they said. But there's a lot of other people that do, I think, get overlooked. And
the other thing is that a lot of people don't realise the term raving. It's been associated with all-night parties since the 60s. There was all-night psychedelic raves at the Roundhouse in Camden.
That's the word being applied.
I live with Rastas, and they would say you're going out raving. That's mid-70s, late 70s.
My mum used to go 4 Aces before it was even a reggae club.
Bob Marley wrote Midnight Raver in 1969. Gregory Isaacs, Raving Tonight, early mid-70s or whatever. So I feel that now... You see reggae, there's a reggae stage on so many festivals now, and rightly so, because reggae was, is, and will always be the original bass music. No doubt about it.
Reggae is what put the bass line into the
responsible for dub plate culture, MC culture. I remember once I see a thing of, I don't know if it was a news clip or a photo of Puff Daddy, and he said a T-shirt on said, "We invented the remix." And I was like, really? Who are you fucking kidding? Have you never heard of King Tubby?
We invented baby lotion.
Lee Scratch
You did invent the baby lotion, though.
I was going to say, I wrote him a letter back then saying, mate, stick to your baby oil.
Yeah.
Boom, boom.
So reggae is the basis of raving.
But Doug, how about for you as a historian, self-confessed historian of the scene? Is there anybody you'd like to shout out? Perhaps an unsung hero doesn't get the credit.
I didn't finish doing my unsung.
Oh, God.
We got to go around.
No, he
Gotta
jumped
get
in
all the
about
voices in.
raving.
Got to get all the voices in.
No, I'm not saying don't speak, but
Just give me another hour. Just
a
quick hour to finish off my
I think
bit.
Go for it.
I was only going to say Potential Bad Boy and Paul Ibiza and his label.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look at the music, people go, 91, there was jungle, there's things, but that traditional modern, if you say, right, jungle today, there's a certain BPM, that speeding up of the music to, today's 165 to 175, the early stuff was more 140, 130, it come from house. And when I did The Exorcist, I did it at 135 BPM by accident. And that's credited as one of the first tunes to speed up when I didn't realise at the time.
How did you
but
do that by accident?
that's another story. The sort of the modern day 170 speeding it up. A lot of it was Ibiza music. The third party. Like Bedroom in Tottenham, Bedroom in Hornsey. All these different smaller producers that never went on to be huge, but they're templates, their ideas, their musical freedom, and the pitching. Because I think all of us at first was like, why is it going so fast? And if you look at 92 to probably 1993, that era there was probably the most experimental era. Where
100%.
You could buy a jungle, hardcore, whatever you want to call it, tune, it would be like 140 BPM. You could buy one that was 180. People were learning about using samples. But I think Paul Ibiza, Potential Bad Boy, that side of the fence, it's still going today, but they've never pushed their market. They don't get all the big interviews, and they were a massive impact, especially on my living in Stoney, living in Hackney. Close friends of mine were gravitating to that speed.
Paul's super humble.
Yeah, yeah, but let's be fair about this. It's not that no one cares. It's the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You can't just expect to get into a business and just smoke weed and make tracks.
But that's my point. It wasn't all business.
I
wasn't a businessman.
Yeah, hold on. I'm just saying that. All these people, you're forgetting the records from that Jungle came from, and all the artists that made all these records in 1988 and all those labels as well. They never got any recognition as well. And if you look at the history history of record shops and all. There's so many people that we built our careers on the shoulders of that don't have that, you know. And I think that today it's a completely different thing. It's all about social media, or it's about something different. All these guys, DJ Tactics, that made records that we'll never ever forget.
Just about to mention him.
Yeah, it's the way, right? I mean, tunes like that, Deep Blue, Helicopter. You know, for me, it's like it's about the memory association with these tracks. Do you know what I mean? They may be unsung, but those people will never be forgotten because these tunes still sound good 40 years later. Whereas, you know, in 20 years, who's going to listen to Crickets?
So, but why do you think that's one of the reasons why this particularly UK form of music has stood the test of time?
Because it rains in England all the time, and everybody if you look at the music that came out of Manchester, look at bands like Verve, look at bands like Ian Brown, look at all the music that comes out of this country. It's a completely different vibe, right? And like Hype said, it's our hip hop. It's.
I didn't say Verve was my hip hop.
You said Britain. It's
no,
Britain.
I said I wouldn't.
Don't start with me, Hype.
UK hip hop. The Verve word.
Yeah,
UK
that's what I
hip-hop.
mean. It's ours. What I'm saying is, it's our style of music. And at the end of the day, I think the culture, the raving, the spirit of being outdoors in fields and all of that is a uniquely, you know, there's a culture that's uniquely British. We don't care if it's raining, they're out raving. Do you know what I mean? There's a certain vibe. What do you think, Doug?
Well, Hype, he touched on something a minute ago about the BPM changing. And I remember, like, you know, I wasn't ever privy to these studio conversations or whatever. Like I say, I was this kid going to Boogie Times, standing at the back of the queue, buying labelled records. I wasn't on the dub plate thing, I wasn't on the promos. I was your common average punter. So for me, it was really hard for me to understand. I'll tell you, I want to like Noise Factory, because for me,
yeah, that's what I was just saying.
Them Noise Factory tunes. Like I bought the black and white third party #1 that had My Mind on one side, and I think it was, I forget the other one on the other side. But it was a really like ragga heavy tune that like I'd heard before them kind of tunes, but it was the first one that really caught me. And after that, I actively went and seeked. Like I was from a white kid from Dagenham, zero black influence.
Oh, yeah? Oh,
That's why I pulled that down. People think I'm black when I pull that down. Okay.
I agree with what you were saying. You know, like Noise Factory.
Don't stop butting in. No, you've already had 7 hours.
He had 7 hours. I had 6 hours.
No, but because I didn't understand it, and obviously years later, talking to these guys, realising they were trying to fit reggae in with the BPM of the music at half speed reggae, so they could double it up to so it was pushing it up, but I couldn't understand it. But I've never ever seen or heard or known of any other music where they've come from a BPM of say 140, 130 to sort of 20, 30 BPMs over the course of 18 months and 2 years. And it's not ruined the music, it's made it grow stronger and better and more.
Interesting.
Well,
I've never known that. Like house is
groove.
house. House has been house forever. It might go up or a couple of BPMs here and there, but everything else stays relatively the same. Our music just got, maybe the drugs were to do with it, maybe it was just the technology where they were pushing boundaries. I don't know because I weren't there, but as a punter and as a raver, it was like there was more energy every week. It felt like, fucking hell, it can't get any better. Oh my God, there's more. And it just kept going up and up and up until, you know, we got to the 180 BPM breakpoint, I think.
Noise Factory and I'll Bring You the Future.
Yeah, mate, that tune there, it was like,
when I
played on
first had
-8.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I first got that, I was like, who makes a tune this fast? Because it wasn't like, everyone...
Yeah,
But that's why I credit that side of the fence for speeding it up.
Yeah,
then
them
you got...
guys, Potential, he's the most... For me, the most underrated producer.
Well, because if
from
you
our
know
scene.
him, again, he's, you know, like, I don't know if, I can't remember if Sharisa said it, you know, like the more, you know, like there's some people that are better at promoting themselves. There's other people that make a great, they name DJ Tactics, you know, like, probably no one's even heard of him in this modern era. But,
everyone
his
knows
song,
his rhythm. Yeah.
But because he's not out there and nobody's shouting your corner.
Yeah,
some
that is
people,
true.
Also, we wasn't, back then,
It wasn't a business.
I never thought, in 20 years' time, I used to call it throwaway. No one, you know, like our music, you know, when some people go, today's music's not like then. You know, every generation does that. You know, like me being the age I'm at and been doing it for so long, I call it's like a 5 to 7 year cycle, I find, where people go, I used to go out, but I don't go out anymore, it's all shit now. You know, or he used to be good, he plays all that crap now. and then that crap in 10 years' time becomes the classics
Yeah.
of
Then
we're the rare
I'll
groove.
play it and they come back.
Yeah, no, but it all plays a part. But I was
Yeah,
going to
you're
say, Dexterous, Kings of the Jungle. He's
Yeah.
another one that doesn't get. I mean, I was in the set. I went to a school called Brookhouse, and I was in a class with me, Shut Up and Dance, Dexterous, Errol. You know, so just in one classroom, you had quite a lot of evolution going on at a stage before Jungle, and
But
to
the
watch
music-
everybody grow with it. And then Shut Up and Dance hated the word jungle. They thought it was racist. When I was like, because they thought it meant jungle bunnies, when to me it was more, living in a concrete jungle, and the sort of jungle, junglist sort of chants from Jamaica. But someone else could probably question me on that. Go, no, it's not come from.
And
me.
you said, interestingly, you said there you thought it might have been throwaway at the time. 30 years later,
Well,
we're
I
still
didn't
talking
have
about
a
it,
high
right?
opinion of
Yeah.
my. I wasn't
Yeah.
like, we're creating classics. We were just making raw, and I didn't give a shit what you thought of my music. To me, it was almost like a small. This is our thing. They can't do what we do. It's unique. It was like
Yeah,
a
and that's
British
what we bought
London.
into as the
What's
punters.
Ron's thing? A London something.
Yeah.
Now it's a global thing. Daddy always says, like my mum used to call it. I used to practice I had a bedroom off my living room, so and my mum used to. I had a stack in my bedroom, and Shut Up and Dance used to come round on a Sunday, and we'd have what we call a jam session. They'd be rapping, I'd be cutting up and scratching. My mum called it whopping and scraping, and she'd go absolutely mental. Oh, please, I can't have it. It's whopping and scraping. And Earl done a lyric. Was it? He lived with his dad. He's like, my dad says, "What's all the noise you're making?" Hype's mum says, "What's that whopping and scraping?" Now we got the whole world. I can't remember the other bit, but it's like the whole world raving to it. It's a lovely evolution. But to sit here and go through name, I could go for. He's a better train spotter. But if I sat with him, we could probably pull.
Do you know
out
what?
a
Even
million
people
more.
like Smurf, at Cool FM,
Yeah.
like them early days of Cool,
was with
when
his
for
brother
me,
2 weeks ago.
like Cool was everything to me, and a lot of people like me, our generation, give us radio when we couldn't go to raves, not old enough, didn't have enough money, through the week recorded sets, and I learned my black music history and my black music everything pretty much came from Cool
I
FM.
think Cool played a massive part.
But Smurf, Eastman obviously, and rightly so, gets all the props. But them early times, Smurf was there. So the modern era will always big up Eastman, and Eastman will always big up a Smurf. But for them, there was no Cool without people like that. And that station gave people like me everything and to pass on. And so there's a million unsung.
and there's another
more
generation
unsung
there.
I think it
heroes
opened the
than
door
sung
for
ones.
MCs as well, Cool FM.
100.
Because if you go back to that period, they were that kind of full on. They embraced that whole thing, and they still today do it.
Man, I've never seen people passing a mic before from the background I come from. Obviously, in reggae, it was a thing. I never knew reggae. When I saw rave DJs playing the music I love, then there's this MC. I saw Everson Allen for the first time, blew my mind. And then all of a sudden, there's 2 of them and 3 of them, and they're all good. And it made like a beautiful cake with a massive cherry on top of it, the MC thing, and Cool were for me instrumental in that. So even that,
And we're
Unsung
talking
again.
now, 3 decades later, younger generation discovering the music for the first time. And later this year, we'll be returning to Marshall Arena in Milton Keynes for Sanctuary Forever on November the 1st, Bowlers in Manchester for Forever on May the 3rd. And World Dance is also set to return. But what do you think sets some of those iconic venues and events apart in UK rave scene's history? Perhaps starting with Jay.
For me, I think that those memories are so precious to people that these events that are targeting, I guess, what I'd like to call the veteran raver now. The music stood the test of time. The younger promoters are not organising events that appeal to that audience group, and so those events that you've just listed there, they very much target that older audience, and this is an audience that have already been there once, so they know what they like. They're not experimenting anymore. They know what they want to hear. They know what, I guess, facilities they expect to see, and that they're willing to pay for. And so I think that one thing that a good promoter brand builds up is the trust of its audience. and that's not built up easily. It's easily lost. It's not built up easily. And, you know, over the years, over decades, I've been asked to do World Dance again, host stages at other people's events. And I've just always declined because, again, I've just said that the memories are precious to me and so many thousands of people that if I ever did anything again, I would have to do those memories justice. And now, finally, found the right space, found the right team of people to work with. You know, Imran's introduced me to Ollie from Event 1. You know, I've found Ollie to be, you know, he's 20 years younger than me, but he's so appreciative of, even as a modern day promoter, he's so appreciative of where the scene came from and what his business now has built upon. Like Sharissa said, you know, things we you know, modern day things stand on the shoulders of the things that went before. And so for me, I just felt that, you know, every 10 years, the old school becomes the new school, and it has its time again.
Yeah.
You know, Jungle came back round again. UK Garage has come back round again. Some of those classic house tunes, even 40 years on, they're still some of the best music you're ever going to hear. And so for me, as an event organiser, to be privileged enough and still have the respect and contacts amongst my peers, that a lot of them are my friends, I just felt it's the right time to do it again. And you know, and for me, the cornerstone of my lineup curation or booking policy is I want to be phoning people that I've known for decades and I came through the scene together. And, you know, and just simply say, do you want to come and play some music? We're doing it again. And yeah, of course, love to.
I haven't had that phone call yet.
No, you haven't yet, bub. But don't worry, all right. And it's literally in the last few months where I've started to focus down with Ollie on sourcing the right venue and whatever. I've realised part of what I've missed about the scene that I loved, but I've also started to experience again part of the scene that I don't love.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the grief in booking venues, the competition out there, sometimes the hurdles that get in your way for just trying to book your old friends to come and play some music for you. So I won't go into too much detail about that. I'm trying to book a show at the moment, but you know, one thing I've said before on interview, I do them rarely, but one thing I've been quoted as saying before is that a scene is about everybody involved in that scene, not one part of it, because when it's only one part of it, that part are monopolising that scene. So, you know, the people that used to give out the flyers in the middle of winter at 6 o'clock in the morning outside of clubs, the people that run pirate radio stations, without them, this scene would not have evolved. Yeah. And so I've got love and respect for, you know, there are people that I credit to be, I say I'm a graduate of the old school, but there are some people that are the headmasters. They are people like the Rat Pack as artists. They are promoters like, you know, like Tintin from Energy. You know, Jeremy Taylor, Tony Colston-Hater, Wayne from Genesis. They're people that inspired me early on to get into this game as a promoter. You know, we touched on Paul from Ibiza Records earlier. You know, whenever I see Paul, I bow down to people like Paul, because they are core building blocks of this scene and should be recognised as such.
Yeah. And Rat, what's it like for you to have that legacy of playing all those original events and get the chance to do it again? What was Sanctuary like for you last November, and what are you looking forward to about the events this year?
I think if I'm going to be really honest about everything, I hold the promoters to a really high standard, because this is not the first time we've done this. So when I go into one of those raves, I expect a certain level of what the ravers deserve, because everything Jay said is exactly how I feel. These are precious memories. These aren't corporate raves where you've got the latest music and the latest gadgets. And for me, what I want to see is a rave that makes me feel like I've got my youth back again. And so when I go and play these raves, there's that feeling of community. There's that feeling of family.
It's emotional for people.
It's emotional. That's what I mean. So
And
I
it's the people
hold.
that go, they've got a lot
Yeah.
of love. Like, listen, like how I've been speaking, all them people out there feel the same.
Yeah.
Like they've invested their lives into this thing as punters. It's a big deal for them to do these things again. Whether
I'll
it be
tell you something
Sanctuary
else as
or-
well. I always
or
get
World
people.
Dance, whatever.
Yeah, I always get people. Sometimes I'll have people have conversations, and I won't mention names, but they'll be like, you know, how can you play the same records at the rave? I'm pushing things forward. And I feel like saying to someone, look, we're all good producers. We can all produce a cat on a tin roof if we want. But when you go to these certain gigs, there's a certain memory association with each track. And I'm not there to educate you and bring you the latest style or whatever. There are other raves for that.
You're there to entertain.
I'm there for entertaining, and it's my job to make you forget about the week you've had, the crappy day you might have had. It's my job to make you feel like just for an hour when I'm on the decks, you're just having the best time. You're transported back to those golden days. That I don't care if you call me a crowd, call me what you want. It's the reason I'm still here today. My job isn't to be the highlight of the night. My job is to be your highlight of the night and make it brilliant for them. Because that's how I want to feel when I go raving. I don't go out. But I will go to certain raves because I know I'm going to see all my friends. I'm going to see the certain family, the DJs, you lot. You know, you're my family. It's family. That's what we want. We want family when we go to a rave.
You know, it's something we used to say to the AWOL crew back in the day, that when you play AWOL every week, that's experimental.
Yeah,
play
that's
what
the
you
whole
want.
That's
thing.
different.
That's
yeah.
cutting edge.
Yeah.
When you play World Dance, in some cases it could have been on the same night. I want people remembering and singing or whistling and humming the last track that they heard on the way home, not wondering what the fuck it
Facts.
was.
Yeah, facts.
You know?
Yeah.
And I got a final question for you all. For those that didn't experience the 90s rave scene, some of those parties in places like Manchester, Milton Keynes, how would you describe that time in 3 words, starting with you, Magika?
Oh, wow. Magical, moving, emotional.
Well done.
Yeah.
That's pretty
You
much
nicked my
it.
3 words there, dude.
One thing I would quickly say is what I find, what I like.
We're gonna,
No, is that
you got 3 words?
Yeah, but it's 4 words.
Okay, you can have 4.
No, because what I'm always
I'll give you
told
4.
when I meet sort of old, you know, like people sort of between 40 and my age, 26. No, I'm 57 this year. When I meet people my age or in that generation that went when it was, whether it was the hardcore era, the jungle era, like 90s, always get you was a soundtrack to my life, and that I very
That's
much
4
like
big
when
words.
someone, and that's not my view, is what I'm told.
No.
That was
So-
worth the extra word.
yeah,
That is worth the
a
extra word.
soundtrack to their lives.
Soundtrack to life.
You know, and they grew up on it, and the passion. They're not just,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I used to go raving and I like the rave. It's like it meant a lot
It
more.
meant
I get,
something.
I get comments from people that say, you know, you brought me through my dark days, which I don't know what they went through, but just the fact that they credit you. You know,
Yeah.
I got another mate used to call me Be Like You, Be Lucky DJs. That's what he used to call us. You know, and I used to say I'm just a bloke that plays records.
Thanks,
It's a whole
thanks for
lot.
them
It's
3
a whole
words.
lot.
Soundtrack,
Yeah.
soundtrack
That's your
to
3 words,
Lucky we
outside.
never asked
In
for
my
six.
world, that was 3 words.
Let's have 3
Over
words
to you,
for rap.
Jay.
We're going to go to
Oh,
we're going to go
gosh.
to we're going to go
You
to
took
rap.
over.
We're going to rap. We're going to rap.
No, we're not.
3 words.
You need. Shut up. That's what I'm gonna flick you in a minute. I mean, Magika really did it best, but I would say unique, innovative, and community.
Doug's.
What was the question again?
3 words to sum up that
Raving in the Midlands.
that passion you feel for the rave scene.
Fucking mission home.
To describe the 3 words to describe the
Long way
experience
home.
of that time. Long way home.
Yeah.
It always was. And Jay, closing with you.
Touching on what Imran said, amazing shared experiences.
Well, thanks so much, and big respect to Hype, Jay from World Dance, Uncle Doug's Rap, and Magika for sharing their stories with us. And don't forget, you can catch these guys live at Sanctuary Forever on November the 1st at the Marshall Arena in Milton Keynes, and Manchester Forever at Bowlers on May 3rd. And World Dance will be returning. Tickets are available now.
Whoa.
Thanks for having us.
Is it going to be a
Brilliant.
tape pack?
Thank you so much. I can't-